All right, so let's keep talking about the FHA insured. FHA, because it is a high loan to value, it's 96.5%. That only means the buyer has to bring in 3.5%. That is above the 80% that we have defined as conventional, so the lender can charge PMI. Or here they call it MIP, the mortgage insurance premium. It's typically a one-time charge up front when you go $200 or $300, $400, $500. Because it's a bank loan, they're still using primary mortgage money. They can still charge things like loan origination fees. They can still charge things like discount points. All of the stuff that would normally happen in a regular loan. There's a quote in there that says, as of November 2009, seller pays more than 6% of the cost to the paid by the buyer. So that's another thing. You can ask for, buyers can ask for assistance from the seller to help pay for some of this stuff. There's a limit on how much they can ask for, 6%. So if you're buying a $100,000 home, the most you could ask for is $6,000 in help. The lender won't allow any more than that. Typically, they don't ask for that much. Right now, the big favorite number seems to be $3,500 for everybody. The last 3 or 4 I've written have been $3,500 in assistance. I don't know why that number, but that seems to be the going rate. An assumption. FHA used to be an assumptive loan. What's an assumption? An assuming. How do you, remember we talked about one way you can assume a loan?
People change contract status.
Right. You would just literally call FHA and say, Dusty wants off, Raymond's taken over. Before 1986, they were freely assumable. Literally, the example I just gave you is what we would do. Call the lender and say, take Dusty's name off, add Raymond's to it. Okay. Between 86 and 89, they became partially assumable, meaning Raymond would at least have to qualify. Since 89, everything now is fully qualifying to assume an FHA loan. All of the freely assumable loans are now gone because it ended in 86. 30-year mortgage made it what? 2016. We're now into 2017. All those loans are gone. So there are no more freely assumable loans out there. When you assume a loan, you typically pay a fee for that. So if I was to assume Dusty's loan in that example, they may charge me a discount point. What's the balance of the loan? $100,000. It's going to be $1,000 to do that assumption. To me, an assuming of a loan that is fully qualifying is getting a new loan. And why would you want to assume in a loan that was written in 1989 or 90? What was the interest rates then? A lot higher. And if you could fully qualify to assume, you would just fully qualify to get a new loan at whatever it is today, 4%. So while they are assumable, never seen it happen much. There's a little talk about the HUD home. HUD homes are sold as is. This is always a contention among agents. What does as is mean? They are not going to fix anything. Can I still have an inspection? Yes, because I'm not buying a pig in a poke. Please tell me somebody's heard of that. You guys all heard of that? I told my agent that the other day, and she looked at me like I had 3 eyes. She goes, what? What's a pig? Is that a pig in a poke? You never bought that? You know, guys, a poke is a bag, by the way. And they would put pigs and sell pigs in the bag, and then they would put cats in them instead of pigs. So they would cheat buyers. That's where that term comes from. You guys will sleep better tonight knowing that. All right? So HUD typically sells homes as is, meaning they're not going to fix anything. They don't want to get involved. So your offer should reflect the amount of work that you've got to put into it. All right? Let's see, what's a prepayment? There is no prepayment penalty on any FHA-insured loan. Matter of fact, let's let the cat out of the bag. There is no prepayment penalty on any government intervened loan, period. No prepayment on a VA, no prepayment on a Farmer Mac, no prepayment on a VHA, none of them. This is the one case, remember I told you, where the government literally wants their money back. So they're not going to charge you a penalty to give their money back because they want it back to give it out to another person. So if you borrow money and you hit the lottery that night, you can go back in the next day and just pay off what you owe. No prepayment penalty on any of the governmental loans or the governmental backed loans. So we understand it's an FHA insured loan. They don't make the loan. That city makes the loan. Another big governmental loan is called the VA loan. Once again, the Department of the Veterans Affairs does not loan money. It works virtually the same way, only it's, instead of HUD backing it up, it's the VA backing it up. It's a VA guaranteed loan. Works the same way. If you're a veteran, there's some bullet points on the top of 275 I would look at if I were you. Hint, hint. That would define what a veteran is. You could potentially have access to the VA guaranteed loan. It's based on, active duty, years of service, things like that. Now, what happens is when you go to the VA to qualify, they give you this thing called a certificate of eligibility. Anybody used a VA loan in here? Guys? Thank you for your service, both of you. What branch? Marines? I'll talk slower.
Well, my husband was a Marine. I did Army.
Marine, and you did Army? I was 74 Delta. I was actually 74 Foxtrot computer programmer in the 327th. You know the highest ranking Marine? Secretary of the Navy. That always pisses them off because Marines hate the Navy. Right? Buddy of mine was a Marine. He said all the Navy is a taxi service. When we want to get somewhere, we make the Navy take us. But thank you then for serving. So you go and you get a certificate of eligibility, which keys in or clues in on the lender how much they'll loan you. Now here's a small fact. The lender can actually lend you more than you're eligible for. The eligibility is telling the lender how much they'll protect. So based on whatever had the rigmarole that you get, if you say you get a $400,000 certificate of eligibility, if you qualify with the income and all that, and the lender says we want to loan you $500, that's fine. If you go south, VA is only guaranteeing the $400. So most lenders usually just stick with the certificate of eligibility amount because they know it's guaranteed. All right? Now, like all of the other stuff, the VA also has no prepayment penalty. They still can charge all the discount points and all of that. But there's one other really cool thing the VA does that I think if we had done this as a society, we probably would have saved a lot of 09's problems. Right before the deal closes, now remember the bank hires an appraiser because it's a bank loan. So they hire an appraiser to go out and look at it. Right before the deal closes, the VA sends out their own guy and does this thing called a certificate of reasonable value. A certificate of reasonable value. Think of it like a second appraisal. You also hear it called the CRV. What the certificate of reasonable value is the VA's guy who comes back and says, hey, I did, and finger quotes, appraisal. That property's worth about 150. The bank's appraisal said 150. Must be a good property then, do the loan. All right? Now, if something happens where the CRV guy comes back in and says, hey, that's a vacant lot, I don't know what they're getting at, then the VA is going to look at the bank and go, hey, go ahead and do that deal, but we're not guaranteeing that property. And hopefully cooler heads would prevail and the bank would go, okay, stop, time out, what's going on? How did we get 150,000 and you got zero? We need to look at something. So in essence, what has happened is you have found a way to not tamper with two appraisals. We would not have got into some of that appraisal fraud that we had in 08 and 09 if we'd have had two guys. It's hard to bribe two people. All right, what's the old story about three can keep a secret if two of them are dead? All right, same kind of concept. So the certificate of reasonable value is the VA's way of going out and taking care of it. Now, the VA does allow assumptions. It's like $500 to assume the loan. But wait, there's more. Think of my VA eligibility like my checkbook. I want to go out, I use that eligibility, and I get a loan, and I buy a house at 200 grand. That was what my eligibility said. When I sell that house, the new buyer comes in, brings me my 200, I pay off my loan, my eligibility goes back into my credit book. Now I can go get another home with an eligibility. But if I let someone assume it, there's no money that changed hands, right? Because they're assuming the loan that's already in place. So what happens to my eligibility certificate? It's still tied up in that property. I won't have it to go over here because I left it over there on that property. So while they are assumable, there are issues with your certificate of eligibility being tied up in that property. So most VAs, I've never done one, let's put it that way, I've never done one with an assumption because they want to carry that forward to another property. Okay? So while they are assumable, not necessarily the best idea there is. Yes?
I was just reading a little farther into the other loan costs, where it states no commission, brokerage fees, buyer brokerage fees may be charged to the veteran.
That's because, yeah, they're the buyer. The seller pays the commissions. So you can't negotiate. Theoretically, remember I've been involved in one deal where the buyer actually said, I'll pay the real estate agent, even though the listing agent gets his commission from the seller. This is telling you that you can't make that negotiation. Buyer can't.
So when we bought our house in the VA loan, we paid commissions, and that was.
You didn't pay the commission. The seller paid the commission.
I'm pretty sure it was split.
The broker's commission was split. You're 1 in 10 million then. I've done $100 million in my career, and I've seen it asked for one time. Check that out. I'd like to see that. Well, first of all, my guess is you didn't, because if you used a VA loan, they wouldn't allow it. The lender and the title company would have stopped the deal. The seller pays the real estate commission, 7%. He splits it with your broker. Now, you could always argue, well, I paid it because I paid $200 for the house, and he took his profit, and if I could have paid $193 for the house, with no agent. I've seen buyers argue that all the time, where they're going, well, I'm really paying for it because I'm the one giving him the money, even though the seller's writing the check. You guys see what I'm saying? But what this is saying is it cannot be on your buyer's side of the closing statement. And I have seen that one time in 17 years where the buyer said, I'll pay the real estate commissions because he was buying it on land contract and he wasn't putting enough down to cover the commissions, so he struck a deal with the agents that way. If you did that, I'd like to see your closing. That'd be cool, because I've never seen it done. While technically it is a negotiable item, buyers never agree to pay for it. The next one would be the one that you probably haven't known about yet. We actually have one called Farmer Mac. It's a USDA loan. It is designed for low income, low population areas where the intent was farming, for farmers that needed to buy houses and were going to contribute to the dairy association and any of the farmers. The good thing about that is I'm actually doing a deal right now with one of my clients in Bloomington. They're the buyer, I'm the listing agent, it's my stepson selling their house. The buyer's using a USDA loan. They will loan over 100%. They loan 100% plus some of the closing costs. And there's fees associated with that. So like the buyer is getting 102% loan or 101% loan. USDA, it's called Farmer Mac. All right? It's a USDA loan. Now the cool thing about the USDA loan, or an ag loan, that's another one. I think it's actually the FSA, the Farmer Services. That's where the name Farmer Mac comes from. So you got Jenny Mac, Bernie Mac, Chili Mac, Big Mac, Farmer Mac, all those that go together. I like Bernie Mac. He was a good guy. It's funny. I love Cat Williams, but you can never repeat any of his stuff. So the cool thing about the good thing or the bad thing is not only does the person qualify, the property has to qualify. What I mean by that is they will only loan in certain areas. Now, I don't know the website, but I know that if you go to like USDA.gov and you jack around with the site long enough, you can actually find this locator where you can put the address of your house in, 12 Smith Street, Phoenix, Arizona. It'll come back and tell you this house is eligible for a USDA loan. Or it'll say this house is not. So let me help you out. There is no property in Marion County that qualify. Population's too big, the average income's too high. We work under a Unigov system, so our whole county is the city. Contrast that with like Morgan County or Monroe County. Everything qualifies just about. You can get a house in the middle of the city with a FSA loan because low income, low population, rural. Well, I mean, you still got to qualify for the loan. Now, their standards, I don't want to say lower, but it's designed to help low-income people in low population areas that are trying to be farmers and start farms. So, you know,
Property, isn't it, doesn't have to qualify.
Do what?
Doesn't the property have to qualify for certain things though? So it has to be a pretty good size. Like,
I looked at
think it's a
one
half
when
an
I was
acre,
single
isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I said. The property has to qualify. So I listed one, my cousin's house, I told you my grandmother passed away in Shelby County. She qualified, that house qualified because it was in a rural county. So one of the things we marketed the property with was at that time it was 105% loan available if the person qualified. All right?
Mom started up families, things like that.
Yeah. So, and it's one of those things where also you can't qualify. It's kind of reverse. You know, to qualify, a family of two has to make 80 grand to qualify for the loan. This one is like family of two has to earn less than a certain number. If you earn too much, they're going to say you don't need the help. So that's what I mean by qualify.
And they just changed the qualification.
They do what?
They just changed the qualification.
Oh, did they? Like I said, I'm listing one right now where the buyer's getting 101%.
Yeah, one of my good friends is a mortgage broker.
So